Secrets of the C-Suite, the podcast, is for anyone interested in leadership and the wins, losses, and lessons of being an executive. We are two women who have successfully navigated C-Suite roles and are sharing our experiences. We will be bringing on guests to tell their stories and want to spark honest conversation and discussion, which may include swearing and lots of laughs. Join us on this adventure.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Secrets of the C-Suite. This episode is Juliet and Susan Unplugged, which means it's a fairly unstructured, unscripted conversation between the two of us about what's on our minds. So with that said, let me welcome my colleague, Juliet.
Hey, Susan.
How are you?
I'm really good, as you know.
So for our listeners, we've had a half a day of thinking and planning about the podcast and a few other things. And we thought it was a great opportunity to record. So we are in actually the same building, and she is downstairs in one room and I am upstairs in another room. And here we are having an informal, unscripted chat. I thought a great place to start for us, Juliet, if you're willing, is to share one of the, let's call it epiphanies, one of the big insights that you had over the holiday.
You know, I think when you're young, there's expectations, societal expectations. You know, are you going to get married? You're going to have children? What career? There's a lot of pressure, I think external pressure about life questions. And I hadn't thought about it much. I kind of followed that trajectory. I got married. I had a child. I answered all those questions when I was young. But the question when you get older and into your 60s, as we are, is when are you going to retire? And you've had a retirement, which is interesting. Some people have retirements that aren't really retirements, but it's the way you talk about something if you've been at one place for a very long time, or you're getting some sort of pension, or there's something about that is the language of retirement, but it's not necessarily retirement. But anyway, many people that are in my age group and friends of mine are officially retiring, which means they're not working anymore. They have stopped working. I thought about it when I started this new job of, okay, I'll retire from this job. It'll be good. Maybe I'll stay 4, 5, 6 years, whatever that number is. But this will be the last job. I'm just going to have this be the last job. And as I've navigated the last 8 months in this job, which I can't believe, I realized it's like, I don't want to retire. And I don't know if I'll be at this job forever, but I really like working. And I like being in a workplace. Like I think I talked a bit about this in previous episodes, is I like going to an office every day. And that surprised me because I had been working remotely for so long. Being able to get up and put on an outfit and go to work and talk to people is really fun. Now, it's not fun every day, of course, but it's really been a good experience and being with people. And so the idea of retiring kind of has shifted. And my answer to that is now going to be, I'm not going to retire.
Right. So
at least for now.
I love how you're talking about this new job, which you've been in for 8 months. What is it, as you think about your career writ large, what is it about work and the experience of having a job/career that is meaningful for you? What does it give you?
Well, it gives me validation, of course. You know, I've been doing this type of work for 20 something years. So I think I can say I show up at about 75% already baked. And, you know, the last part of it is the learning, which is always fun and exciting and sometimes annoying and scary. But I think that's part of it, is just I know what I'm doing. And I know our secrets of the C-suite is that nobody really knows what they're doing. But that 25% is definitely the navigating of the new, the different, the what, and sometimes the WTF moments at work, which we can have a whole podcast on that one, a whole episode. But what I actually get out of work is the satisfaction of a job well done, producing something, making change happen in a positive way. Coming into a new organization, there's always opportunities for new perspective and saying, so you do that by paper? There's a thing called digital banking. You can just do this and making those little small, they call them low hanging fruit sometimes, just making those small changes and then starting to work towards something really big and transformative. And I think I have that opportunity at this place that I'm at. And also that's the thing that gives me the most juice. And then there's the money.
Say more about that, please.
I don't ever want to stop making money. My dad was describing retirement, that the hardest part of retirement for him was money going out and money not coming in. Now you get Social Security and you have your savings, of course, but that diminishes over time.
It does. And the thing that I will share, that because even though I still work and have an income, and David and I are in business together, and that yields us some income, the reality is you spend, let's call it 40 years of your working life with the societal, let's talk about what you suggested there, these societal expectations of save. You should be at least saving X amount, right? And you save and you save, and you're always thinking of, being the squirrel, putting the nuts away for the winter. And then suddenly you're not saving. You're supposed to be drawing on your savings. And it is, to me, one of the biggest shifts that people don't anticipate and really struggle with managing, because that's what it's there for. But suddenly the psychology of drawing from your pile of nuts, drawing from what your savings, is just a completely different instinct. And everything in your body says, but no, I'm supposed to be saving. And maybe that helps you make your money last longer so that you're frugal in those years.
Right.
It requires a major cognitive shift around your assets, and if you have them, your savings, and how to think about them.
And I'm still saving. Like, I'm still definitely in a mode where I'm not at the retirement number or whatever that is. I have a number in mind that's the number I need to be at if I were going to retire. So there's definitely, I still have that in my head. That's not changing, because I do want to make sure that should I not be able to work, there's money to live on, for sure.
Right.
But I also think that there is, in my mind, it's a nice freedom. And we'll talk about freedom maybe a little bit later. Yeah. It's a nice freedom to not have to save anymore. That also changes your ability to have flexibility around working. So
yeah,
when I get to that point, that might be when I shift the way I work and the way I bring in money. But it's, I have to say, it's just freeing to have an answer to that question.
All right. So we've got two topics that we need to tee up in just a second, but I do want to acknowledge to our listeners, Juliet and I both have long careers in the workplace with good jobs that were, for the most part, pretty well paying. And so when we talk about saving and having enough for a number to retire, it is obviously from a place of incredible privilege. There are people who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to break even, just to make their ends meet if they do that. So we're obviously in a rarefied world where we can talk about having made enough money to save to then, quote, retire.
100%. And I do also want to say that I was there for a very long time, and I am late to the party of saving. Yeah. I did not have enough to save for many, many years. I'd say until the last 10 years, honestly, I was in a deficit of just making ends meet. And it was because I hadn't made that leap in salary, number one. And I just my expenses were very different and my life was very different. So I understand that struggle. I do feel like it is a privilege to be able to save, and even having money beyond Social Security is rarer than we think.
Rare and unfortunately necessary too.
Yep.
Social Security. Oh, of course, we don't know how long it's going to last, but that's a whole.
Let's not go there.
Podcast.
I think too, though, we live in an area where you have to have more, and there's possibility of, living in places where you can live on a lot less, and we just have chosen this crazy expensive world that we live in.
Right. Our nuts would go further in a different part of the country, to extend my squirrel metaphor. We be squirrels, lady. What I wanted to do, if you'll bear with me, is share a little bit about my insight over the break.
Yeah.
As you know, I came back to the United States for Christmas. My mom is 93 now, and I wanted to make sure, and Christmas is her favorite holiday. And it turned out we kind of had a meh holiday in North Carolina at my sister's for no reason. Then all of us were kind of tired, and it wasn't great. But then I came back to California, and it rained for an entire week, and I realized that I was deeply depressed. I was in a funk. And part of me was like, I just want to get out of it. And then another part of me was like, what is going on here? And where I ended up is realizing that I was exhausted. And I explained to a friend, with tears in my eyes, I'm like, I feel exhausted on a soul level. And it occurred to me that the end of 2025, which was really busy, I had friends visit in South Africa, which was both wonderful but exhausting. And then I ran my retreat, which was amazing and exhausting. And I had a full roster of clients, which I had never really I had more clients than I had ever intended to have. So 2025 in writ large was a really successful year. And now I'm kind of like, I don't want to feel this disconnected from joy, certainly from purpose, from feeling rested. So it's not like I wasn't getting enough sleep, but I just felt this. So anyway, then the rain stopped, thank God, because I know that it affected other people, like roads were washed out and stuff. And all I was doing is sitting and pouting in the condo and looking out at the gray weather. But I realized that what I might be going through is a really healthy moment of I accomplished things that I really wanted to, but in a way that isn't sustainable for who I am now. And it's not, I don't want to be doing this, although those thoughts did cross my mind. I don't want to lodge in South Africa. I don't want to have a coaching business. And then I realized, no, that's not what I really mean. What I mean is that maybe the business models for my coaching practice and the business model for our lodge in South Africa need to adjust. Something needs to shift. Now, how? I don't entirely know, but it's clear to me that this sort of exhaustion has raised enough questions of how do I want to be doing it in a way that still brings me joy and income and connection, but without leaving me headed into December feeling like my gas tank is completely empty. Because ironically, I got more filled up in my coaching business and even in the lodge business than I ever imagined. So I haven't obviously cracked the code on this. I just keep thinking, this isn't about me quitting. Like I said, I will acknowledge I had those thoughts. I'm going to burn it all down. I'm going to go join an ashram in India. It was really more like, why am I so depleted? What do I need? And what shifts can I choose to make that might work better? So there's a lot of questions in there, but it was an epiphany of sorts to actually notice that I was in this deep funk, not have a really good sense of what was going on with me other than I think some change needs to happen. And so now I'm just walking around with questions and feel like I'm really opening myself to the universe, for spirit to give me insight. Like I don't know the path. And in the meantime, I'm still doing what I should be doing. My business. I'm not working hard to get new clients. I'm not working hard to recruit for my retreats. They're there. And maybe that's it. Maybe I just shift my input energy. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because your epiphany is really different than mine. And yet it also has some similarities.
100%. I think one of the things that you mentioned this morning when we were talking was adventure. One of the things that you need and that your life in South Africa gives you is that sense of adventure. And that's important to you. So I think too, you kind of went on this, you dove in with all you had. And it was a succession of one thing after another. You had guests every weekend, which I know that feeling of you're just changing sheets. You're just
yeah.
And you're making meals and you're changing sheets and you're making meals. And it's wonderful. You have these wonderful moments in there, but it does leave you depleted. And I hate to say it, even though I think we're both very energetic people, you can't keep it up at this age all the time, So there's a piece of that you have to remember. There's going to be a depletion, an organic depletion that happens just because we don't have it all the way we used to have it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what your body's telling you.
I'm actually really fine with that as a concept. And for our listeners, Juliet and I were talking about the idea of hosting retreats, the two of us leading retreats here in Northern California. And we somehow very quickly, as sometimes happens with people who are like us, we got to what would it look like and how would it work? And I said, we're hiring a cook because I'm not going to make sure that there's good food on the table for our guests, because that's just one more thing that then gums up my focus and my attention.
Right,
and,
right.
Doing one meal is one thing, but doing 7 meals over the course of a few days.
Exactly.
So it's just funny how, and we're in a position where, depending on how we price our retreats, we can afford to hire someone to take care of some of the logistics for us.
Exactly.
We're not going to do all that.
Exactly. No,
so that's 100%. A piece of being wise about our energy and where our time is best spent. And honestly, I really wish I had learned that in my 30s. I mean, I've just been so wired to kind of do everything. And there does come a time when I can still do everything, but the quality has gone off the cliff. She says candidly.
Yeah. Well, again, you didn't have the resources when you were in 30s. I mean, it's a very different world. And the thought of hiring someone to do what you can do it's foreign when you're young. So to all the emerging leaders who listen to this, take a moment to think about the things that you don't have to do, that there are other people out there that might do it better or as well, and will let you save your energy for something a little bit more.
There are always creative arrangements for that. Not everything has to be a cash exchange.
Right.
You have other gifts and opportunities.
We need to get back to more bartering. I think that's a good thing.
So I wanted to come back to the second topic that I've earmarked, because it came up for us a lot in our conversation this morning before we were recording. But also just this theme, I think, for both of us is the concept of letting go, either letting go of an idea or letting go of an old constraint. Or in my case, it would be letting go of maybe a business model that needs to get tweaked, right? But this concept of letting go and what can come in its place sort of, to me, points in the direction of freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you can remember some of the things you and I talked about earlier about what freedom comes up for you now, because in some ways you are less free because you got a full-time job.
I am, but I'm more free in a way because I have consistency in my income. I'm not having to market constantly for new business, and that is very freeing. There's structure to my day. So it's a trade-off, kind of like we were talking about with the other stuff. It's a trade-off. And I think we were talking a little bit about waking up with anxiety this morning. We were talking about waking up feeling anxious and how much less we have to be anxious about as we've gotten older. And some of it's hormonal, to be honest. I think, when you were in your late 30s and 40s and early 50s, there's a lot going on in your body that is not explainable and really sucks. And if you are an Instagram person, or I think there's YouTube, but I follow Just Melanie because she has the We Do Not Care Club. And it's something I wish I had when I was at that age, of going through some of those things. But I was kind of talking a little bit about being affected at work, by things that don't affect me anymore, when I was younger, like things that just would bother me and it would keep me
looping,
tripping out, and I couldn't focus because I was like, I shouldn't have said that, or, what do you mean by that? And getting worked up. And I think, one of the things about freedom and letting go is I just don't care what people think of me that much anymore. And There's something in that that's so interesting. But it doesn't mean that we don't want feedback and we don't want recognition, most definitely. I think back to what I was saying about that I bring about 75% of the work from my experience. I don't question things as much. And I don't know if that makes sense along the lines of what you were thinking, but.
Well, it's, one of the things we were talking this morning is that a lot of our cognitive and emotional disposition, our tendencies get wired and reinforced over time. So if we spent a part of our younger years feeling anxious or feeling hijacked or triggered at work by things, it is really hard, even though we mentally say we don't care anymore, to stop that wiring from happening. Because brain science tells us that there are neural pathways that are well carved. They're very well carved and grooved, and we need to create new ones in order for the old ones to not automatically get kicked into gear. And that's a whole different set of activities to reset us, if you will.
Yeah. So what does that look like, the reset? What do you think the reset could be? What could we work on to do that reset so we're not those anxiety triggers that aren't real anymore? They probably weren't real then either. But what is that?
The nature of anxiety.
I mean, the world is anxious. We cannot deny that it hurts to be alive right now in the United States. It's awful.
It's scary and it is anxiety producing. I feel like certainly in terms of rewiring, it starts with the noticing. Oh, I'm having this sensation. Is there, and looking around, is there some reason explicitly why I'm, reacting this way, or does it seem to have come from nowhere? And then consciously saying, what can I do that replaces that feeling in this moment? Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe it's having a conversation with someone. But it is, I think, intentionally choosing a different response in that moment. The hard part is when you don't know where it comes from, which most generalized anxiety doesn't have oh, my boss yelled at me or my husband is mad or, you can't point to a thing.
Yeah.
You just have that feeling and you're not sure where it comes from.
Right.
Which is part of why I think it's an old pattern, just rather than a helpful, sometimes our body is telling us to pay attention to something that we should be aware of and we should be nervous about.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that's always in play.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's probably 90% old shit.
Old shit. Exactly.
And we're going to let go of old shit. That's 2026.
We're going to let go of stories that no longer fit us. We're going to let go of neural pathways that no longer work. And I really like this idea that both of us are trying on, which is letting go of stories and themes around work that constrain how we actually are effective in our work, which is like for you, letting go of this idea that, you're 65, you should retire, the shoulds.
Yeah.
Or I have a coaching business and therefore it should look like this. And for both of us, you with a little bit of constraint just because you work for an organization and they like you to, be there.
Yeah.
We can choose a lot of that.
But I have an opportunity. I think one of the things I'm exploring is what could work differently and be more effective. So in other words, it's an institution that has kind of a national way of doing things. It's not a national organization, but there is these norms that are in this industry, which are very physically structured. In other words, you must be in a desk sitting there in a building. And organically, yes, there are students coming to campus and you should be there when there are students coming to campus. But this idea of a box, I guess I would think of it as there's definitely a lot of boxes that you kind of need to fit in that box. And as you know about me, I'm not good with that stuff. Like, Oddly, I don't know how I got this far, but I do not fit well.
Don't like the
boxes.
box.
I do not. I'm not good at boxes. So I think what's interesting about this organization is I've kind of come in and made a couple, I would say, flubs, just in assuming that like everybody understands that that's just a dumb rule. Like why? But it's like, no, we need that rule to feel this level of comfort, and people need that. So one of my jobs, I think, and this has been true in my coaching practice and as a consultant, is helping people get a little more comfortable with different ways of looking at things. So it's a slower process and it takes more time, and it's not my pace that I like.
Yep.
But I also understand that I can learn something from it. And so I'm instead of getting anxious and frustrated by the idea that this could be better, and if you just did it my way, of course,
Of course, your way. So as we're talking, I'm thinking about, your organization, like any organization, has its own neural pathways and typical ways that it responds to things. And, breaking out of those neural pathways in an organization is almost as hard as it is within our brains.
100%.
Metaphor extends. One of the things that this conversation is bringing up for me is the very real return to work orders that a lot of people are experiencing over the end of 2025 and certainly into 26. And the pandemic, of course, nobody could work in a location unless it was a very specific kind of profession. And people got used to working from home. And yes, there were some things that didn't work terribly well because people were remote. But what I've noticed is that there's a return to if I can't see your butt in the chair, you must not be productive. And I wanted to throw that open for conversation, because I know a lot of my clients and a lot of the people I know are struggling with the 180 switch, right? From everyone's at home to some sort of hybrid arrangement, but now we've swung back to, nope, you got to be at your desk 5 days a week. And there's resistance to that.
100%
about that.
Yeah, I think, I think that there should be flexibility. I think if we are treating people as adults, they tell us how they work best. Now, we're not going to be able to accommodate everything, but I would like to know how you work best. And if you're, a 40-year-old person, you should be knowing this already. And if people aren't doing their jobs, then that's a different story. If they're not doing their jobs at home, they're not doing their jobs at the office. Like, that's a whole different thing. I think that Adam Grant had something about remote work, which I just looked up because I think it's a good thing. He said, remote work doesn't thwart productivity, it boosts focus. Government workers are 12% more productive when randomly assigned to work from home. They're more efficient where it's quiet. Most people aren't shirking from home. They're escaping distractions and long commutes. I agree with that, but I also think there is this value in community. And it's very difficult to build community. And when I was working for an organization that had always been remote, we worked really hard at building community. Like, there was fun times, scheduled fun time, which is a weird thing to say, but it was trying to lunches and things that we could do together. But we were on Zoom all day, and that was exhausting.
Right.
But there's a balance. And I think that the companies who are doing the return to work order, I can understand some of it because you have this real estate that you're paying for, and you're probably in a very long-term lease, or you own the property. And so I can see where the business decision is really more about return on investment of resources. So that can be part of it. But the idea that everyone works best in the same way, I think is going to keep evolving.
Yeah. And it's interesting because to me, this brings up sort of core organizational and leadership questions, which is, how do you know someone's doing their work? And, what do bosses need to feel like they are supervising and leading versus what do employees need to be properly led. And sometimes those are just really different things, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think bosses don't like the extra work of managing remote workforces. It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard because you don't know, you have to trust, and that's a difficult thing. And the person may not be available when you need them. You're not just dropping by the office and saying, hey, do you have 2 minutes? You have to schedule things, and that's work. And you need more administrative time to do that work. But you've saved, an hour and a half each way commuting or whatever it is. So how can we incorporate that? And that's another thing that, we can get into the employment law side of things, but there should be some sort of maybe there's a shared time thing where, yes, you're not having to do an hour and a half of commuting. So our work days are going to look a little bit different. Maybe they're a little bit longer because you can go to the store in the middle of the day, or your breaks are different, or whatever that is. But being able to talk about the reality of things from a labor law point of view might have been a good thing to do when we were in the middle of it. And now I feel like, we'll have to wait for the next pandemic for that to happen.
God, knock wood that doesn't happen anytime soon. But yeah, it's just interesting because I keep thinking about the ways in which organizations, especially large ones, kind of have to have rules to guide. And yet, at the end of the day, I think it really does matter that a specific individual boss and a specific individual employee are connecting over the right questions about the work.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how that always happens. And it doesn't always happen. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we were talking also this morning just about what makes an effective meeting and connection, and what makes effective connection. And, I asked you this, like, we say that we have this saying that could have been done in an email, right?
Right.
But do we define that? What is that email? What does the email need to say so that we don't have to have a meeting? And I think there's something to that we should unpack as a model for good meetings. I was reading an article from late November about, it was, I think, a post, and I'm going to see the person so that PK Kearney, end of year one-on-one, a ritual worth doing well. And I'll put it in the show notes, but it was really good. There was a lot of really good questions. It came from a coaching point of view, but how you have an effective one-on-one. And maybe that's kind of the answer to this micromanaging problem of the need to micromanage, or the feeling like I should be micromanaging, even though I hate micromanaging. But, if my boss said to me, well, what did so-and-so do today? It's like, I don't know, but I know that they got their job done because I, didn't have to do something. So I think that's, there's a question there, but really having meaningful meetings and not doing the meeting for the sake of having a meeting. So I don't know where the answer is there.
I think it's interesting because part of what I'm thinking is this is one of the themes of pretty much everything that I say. So if this sounds boring to our listeners, sorry about that. If you heard this a million times before, it's the intention. It's the explicitness of the intention. Yeah. We're having this meeting for this purpose. And all of you who are in the room have a role to play on the agenda or the topic. And if a leader can't be can't be intentional enough or explicit enough, then people do sometimes leave a meeting going, I'm not sure what I was doing there.
Right.
And if you don't know why you were in a meeting, you should be asking the questions. And a lot of times I think there are two things that I think prevail. One is if everybody's in the meeting, nobody misses anything and nobody has to get looped back in, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then there's kind of the peanut butter quality, right? Like everybody gets a chance to say something and report in and we all hear it. But is that a really good use of everybody's time? And, that again, it's like, we're going to have a peanut butter meeting. Everybody's going to say something so that we all know where we are. And we're going to look each other in the eyes. And that's the purpose of the meeting. It's not to problem solve. It's not to make a new decision. So
it could have been a lunch. That's what I'm going to say.
It could have been a lunch. And, things like report outs, sometimes they do generate questions and engagement. But most of the time, everyone's like waiting for the next person to finish so that they can get on to their, which is to me a perfect email. Just send a high level recap.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's about whoever is calling the meeting being really clear about why do we need this to be a meeting? And what is the agenda, and how can we move through that agenda in the most effective way possible? And you reminded me of something this morning. It's like, not only do we sometimes get to the end of the meeting and wonder why we were in the meeting, but what did we do? Like, did we decide anything? What's our takeaway? What's our call to action? And again, I think that's about somebody leading the meeting or somebody calling it and saying, here's what I heard us say.
And I think there's this, and again, it's probably more nonprofit world, but not wanting to hurt someone's feelings. So you invite everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't want to feel left out. And that's a significant waste of resources. So this idea so we're going from, we got to be in the office. So what's going to happen with everybody in the office. Now we got to have meetings, face-to-face meetings, because we're all in the office now. And now we're going to spend a bunch of wasted energy being in meetings together that could have been an email.
Did an email or a more effective meeting. I think that's the other piece. It's like, how can we? So anyway, I've gone kind of down the rabbit hole on productive and useful meetings. And maybe that's not maybe we can let go of this concept for now.
Let's move on for sure.
So I'd like to kind of change the direction of our conversation, Juliet, and bring us to a little bit of a close. You and I tend to be people who choose a word or three to set our direction for the coming year. And I'm wondering if you are doing it this year, and whether you have words or you're still in the thinking about words process.
I was so invested for years in having this word prepared. Like, I needed to have a word, and it was one word, and it was again, kind of back to our conversation about needing structure. And as I've gotten older, I don't need these things as much. I don't need the tools as much as I used to. But a few words have come up for me, and I think one of them we've said a few times already, is the idea of freedom.
Yeah. And
freeing yourself from those things, those constraints, those constructs that someone else is telling you about. I think also, and I don't know if it's freedom is the right word, but accepting the fact that relationships can change.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really hard thing to do. But I think it's important, where you just don't have the same relationships that you've had when you were younger, and you don't need them in the same way as well. And I'm not talking about romantic relationships, but more friendships or colleagues at work. I don't feel the need to have friends at work. I like people I work with, and I like having lunch with them, but I don't really need to have weekend plans with people. Like, they're not my family. And I think that's that change, right? That, when you're younger, you spend so much time with these people. It's like, oh, they become your family, which is a dangerous thing to do. But it's also letting relationships evolve. It doesn't mean they're ending. It just means they're changing, and they're going to be different. And the dynamics and the roles change over time. So I think that's part of the letting go / freedom piece of it, is accepting that and examining it, and not feeling bad about it changing, but just accepting that things change.
Yeah.
And then my other word,
love your detachment in there.
100%. 100%.
Really showing up, being fully present, but not like graspy or needy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the other word, which I've had in the past, is light. There's so much darkness in the world. I'm just going to keep looking for the light. and the light can mean so many different things. It has so many different connotations. So there's a lot of that, holding things lightly, trying to find the light in the darkness, and lightening up,
Beautiful. I like this. So here's what I heard you: freedom, acceptance, evolve, and light.
Ooh, thanks for documenting it. That's
Well,
great.
I just, and the first couple we had already sort of intuitively knew.
Yeah.
And I've been playing sort of my number one bucket, if you will, and I haven't found the exact right word, is coherence, alignment. There's something about, and I think the reason, I don't know, I read it must have been a post about coherence, which you could easily have, in her writing, you could easily have slipped the word in alignment or integrity. But there's something about coherence that, to me, sort of, I picture like everything from my spirit all the way down to the shoes I wear as being organized in a way that makes sense. And I feel like that's a guiding word for what I choose to do or not do in my coaching business. And I feel like, so there's something around that. And for some reason, coherence is the word that is leading the charge, even though alignment and integrity and some of the other words are available. And so I'll probably be playing with that a little bit. I always like the word expansion. I always like the word abundance, but I don't like expansion more than abundance right now. And I think the other one that's guiding me, and maybe it's the thing that is the do verb before the result of coherence, is experiment. And that, to me, of course, comes with a lot of holding things lightly. It's like, why not try it? What would happen if you tried that?
And not being anxious about it.
I tried a lot of things last year and I learned a lot, but I'm still learning. Like, I'm still figuring out what my takeaways are. I think experimenting is such a wonderful way to live our life anyway. Let's try new things and see what we learn and see what's fun about it.
That's good. I looked up the word coherence because I said, it's not a word I use a lot. It's not in my sentences. It's not in my vocabulary. And it has a lot of different things about it. But one of the things is cool, forming a unified whole.
Yeah.
I liked that. So alignment makes sense for that.
And integrity is kind of the same definition in a way. And the reason why I like coherence is that, to me, the notion of coherence is it's coherent to me, so to others. Like when you are being coherent in your communications, other people understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, which is different from alignment or different from integrity, which is all internal. Like integrity is an internal thing.
Exactly. So. You decide that. But coherent, it actually is, it's something another person needs to validate in a way that they understand you.
Or they could see it and experience it. So it's not just how I feel, it's how am I showing up and impacting the world. So I don't know. Yeah. I really appreciate that sort of talking about it here, because I haven't, as you know, chosen my word, but that's the one that's been mostly on my mind.
There's a flow to that too. It's somehow the word flow came into when you were talking about it, just that there's like I think we talked about this equanimity. It's, one of my favorite words, and just that flow of kind of knowing where you are and being able to articulate where you are and where you're going without it being very jumbled, just like having kind of this flow about the year and the work and and what you're spending your time doing. That's something I kind of underlying in there.
I love that. That certainly makes me feel even more better excited about coherence. And more better excited is the best.
More better excited. I'm going to use that a lot this week.
All right. So we both have words to play with and think about, and you might be in a phase where you don't actually need to choose a word. I know that this year I will choose a word. I do feel that that's an anchor for me still. All right. Is there anything else you want to add to our unscripted, unstructured discussion today before we sign off?
I think I just want to say thank you to our listeners, of course. We were doing a little analysis, and we're somewhere close to 1,300 downloads, which was something like 70 per episode or something average. There was something, anyway. So that felt really good. And we're planning for season 4. And I just love that we keep doing this. And we have a lot of change happened over the time that we've been doing this. And it's only been a year and a half, which is also weird. But how nice that we continue to do this and continue to think about it for us. And I hope that our listeners get something out of it. But it's, again, continues to be an honor and a privilege to spend time with you, Susan, and to be doing this work. And this is kind of the anchor of all the things that we do. So thank you.
That's good. Thank you for saying that. I really get that. And I appreciate working with you too. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been another episode of Secrets of the C-Suite, the podcast. See you in a couple weeks. We're so glad you've joined us for this episode of Secrets of the C-Suite, the podcast. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. In the meantime, please tell your friends and coworkers about us, and be sure to follow, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed listening. Secrets of the C-Suite is produced by Juliet Clothier, Susan Sutherland, and Brian Clothier. Original music is by Brian Clothier, and the podcast is inspired by leaders like you.